a gun in her purse.
Why are we following her?
Because she's dangerous.
She's a really bad influence on you, man.
You're here on your own free will.
She snuck off in the middle of the night so she could be with them.
This girl is everything.
Lizzie!
I don't know.
Welcome to What the Flick, everybody. Episode 2 of The Leftovers. Alonso, Duralde, Ben Mankiewicz. What's
Penguin 1, us 0.
A reference to Justin Theroux's conversation with the world's worst therapist.
Right.
If you're a therapist and you see children traumatized by what are we calling it?
The event.
October 14th.
October 14th.
Traumatized by October 14th. And you have a rubber penguin or a blow-up penguin that they can punch, which is fine. When you have a grown-up patient, you just put it away.
Yeah, there's a closet.
You got a closet somewhere.
Right,
you put it behind a chair. You do something. Yeah, that guy's and he remembered nothing. Oh yeah, I forgot. That's right. Yeah, he was constantly getting stuff wrong. He was really the worst therapist ever.
Your ex-wife, Lori, have you and she had any further contact?
We're still married.
Does she think you're married?
You'd have to ask her.
I get it, because she doesn't talk.
So, it's starting to come together a little bit. We're starting to see, who these characters are, and we're filling in some backstory. We got some of Justin Theroux's father, Scott Glenn,
right,
who I guess is in a relationship with the
mayor.
With the
apparently
mayor.
So, yeah. Another revelation. And as I've been calling this episode, "Or Is He?" Because, we find out that Scott Glenn is indeed crazy.
Right.
Or is he?
Right.
Because he's hearing voices that are telling him things that are true.
Right, and Justin Theroux, is he seeing, is seeing things, or is he, okay, he's not seeing things, or is he?
Yeah.
With the stranger, but the daughter and the daughter's friend see him, so he's...
And even now to the point of are the 2% of the population, did they all die, or are they just stuck in the bagel maker?
Right. Oh yeah. Right. Can you reach and bring them out? Perhaps burned.
There you go.
So now I'm going to get to the things that bother me, and I'm curious whether they bother you. And I read this first. It wasn't sitting well with me, and I guess Ann Thompson gave it a very negative.
People hate this fucking show.
Some do. Yeah.
Out of the gate, people are already hating this show.
She hated it, and she's right about one thing. Justin. He's an okay actor. I'm not knocking him. That guy though. It's a casting choice. That guy's not the police chief. Like a guy now.
Well, he's the son of the police chief who has the job thrust upon him.
That's what we have to. Is that they gave it to him, although what kind of town just automatically gives a police chief job to a guy's kid?
Who were the other, maybe he was just on the force, and it doesn't seem like anybody else on the force is particularly that bright a bulb that they're leaving out. And he's even living in the dad's house.
Yeah, and they seem to respect him, the other officers. They don't, they're not that bright, but they're not like, oh, this guy, the kid, it's a small thing, but a guy that good looking, with that kind of stubble, with those tattoos, is not the guy who is in a position ever at life, no matter how his dad is, to be the chief of police. He might be a detective. He might be a detective who breaks the rules and goes too far, but always wants the truth. But I mean, the chief's job is by its very nature, it's a political job. I get it. We have to get around it by drawing the dad connection.
And there might be some backstory that makes it work. We might find out later that he didn't want to be the chief, and it was sort of thrust upon him, and that he was pressured by the mayor or something. I mean, who knows?
Almost certainly that is going to be true. It has to be true.
It's obviously does not really want to be police chief.
It's
He's just kind of stuck
not
with
his
it.
Dream that he wants. He doesn't want to be living in his dad's house doing his dad's job, and his dad, Scott Glenn, an interesting father-son dynamic, because he seems like a fairly supportive father, but he's like, how's my job, how's my house, and you want to be like, hey, old man, I'm bailing you the fuck out by doing this.
You're making out with this woman who's more often than not making my life miserable, although she's sort of supportive too, Yeah,
she's clearly ultimately on his side.
Yeah.
But again, so there may be an explanation for it, but it doesn't quite sit right. I don't mean to be nitpicky, but it's one of the things that is slightly off-putting to me, and maybe has it that so far, and I'm curious how many of the people watching this feel the same way. I didn't get at any point yesterday oh great, The Leftovers is on. Now that took 5 or 6 episodes with, took a couple episodes of Game of Thrones, took a bunch of episodes with Boardwalk Empire, which I then got super excited for, very anxious for that final season. So I'm unquestionably giving it more time to excite me. But there is still, as I said last week, there's a dourness to it. There's a lack of fun that is missing.
But I mean, how else do you treat this material? I don't know how you would do like this sort of rapture and then be all kind of like woohoo about it, you know.
Totally.
I mean, I like that. I find it interesting that the entire cast of Perfect Strangers was.
But it's 2 straight weeks where the best
joke,
stuff is the joke about the celebrities who got taken.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think because I mean, really, if you look at this show as being kind of a 9/11 metaphor in terms of the you know, big event happens in the U.S. How do we cope with it in our day-to-day lives? How does it affect the media and public policy and you know, things like that? I'm not saying it's a direct corollary, but I'm just.
And when is it okay to move on? When's it okay when's it okay to laugh at something?
Right,
go to a comedy and laugh.
Because you remember the death of irony, you know, after 9/11, like that was over. Yeah, that did last at about 6 months. So, you know, I mean, it's been 3 years.
3 years since the event.
So obviously, but people still seem to be reeling, and you have these weird religious things, and so, you know, I love the insight about how do you become a guilty remnant.
Well, you know,
that was interesting this episode.
I agree. How do you become a guilty remnant? It's still very unclear why Liv Tyler has become a lovely actress, I think.
And like the ending of the episode, does that mean that she's joining? Does that mean that she's breaking free? Like that her being able to chop the tree down could go in either direction. I thought that was really interesting.
Totally. I had a great moment in that because I, you know, as I'm ruining television for my wife while we're watching together, when, you know, she's yelling at Amy Brenneman, and I go, this episode ends with her chopping this tree down, right? By herself. And she's like, whatever. And then when the woman in white walks in to wake Amy Brenneman up that she's
Ann Dowd.
That's Ann Dowd?
Yeah, from Compliance, and if you have started watching Masters of Sex, which we're going to be recapping,
yes.
She plays Masters' mom.
Yeah. So she's good.
Yeah,
right. That's
she's great.
She can act without speaking. She's a stern look. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's very disapproving. But when she walks in, and you're led to believe for a moment that that's Liv Tyler having donned the whites, I think, for a moment, and then it turns out she's gone. So Lee turns to me and is like, oh, well, you got it wrong. And then the next scene, she cut the tree down herself. I was doing a dance. Of course,
you don't get a lot of those, so savor them.
I don't get a lot of them, and of course, we never talk about the the 94 times each episode that I'm wrong about something. That's the, but that was a nice moment. So yeah, we don't know. Does that mean she's staking is she founding her own cult, so to speak, her own way of dealing with it, or is she going to come back with the axe and say, here, take the rest of my stuff and give me my scrubs.
Right.
I'm in. Victor Williams from King of Queens. That's the black guy, the other guy who's in the same sort of purgatory as Liv Tyler. I always knew they'd work together. So when I saw Kevin, that guy's going to work with Liv Tyler. It's inevitable.
And then meanwhile, there's what is it, Holy Dawn, or
the name I don't know. I can't remember the Guilty Remnants. Like until you say it, I can't remember what their name is.
Anyway, so but Huggy Bear, we'll call him. You know, that's that. So we get a Waco on him.
Right, we get a Waco on him. So that goes to what's interesting, like that how we deal with this 9/11 type event. Worse than 9/11 because, you know,
it's inexplicable.
Right, we don't have an explanation, and as almost every, and I don't obviously speak from experience, just from reading and seeing and covering a little bit the victims, the families of murder victims, when there's no resolution, no arrest, and even if there is an arrest and resolution, but it just turns out to be completely random, it is very, very, very hard to cope and move on with that.
And also, you know, and like, you know, look at something like 9/11 where you've got Pat Robertson blaming it on, like, you know, gays and feminists or whatever, you know. So you can just imagine a thing like this where there's no clear thing to blame it on, that it's going to become any number of, oh, well, God did this because that, or no, there is no God, or, you know.
When Mormonism took off in the late the 1820s and into the 1830s, it was one of 500 religions. There were Joseph Smith was one of 1,000 prophets. He just turned out to be the best. He won. Hey, I'm going to make another religion that's going to work. And this would be that time. Like, I get that people would be looking for answers. So there would be cults, and we're seeing cults in this is just a town.
Yeah.
There's probably, imagine what was happening in Chicago. There are probably hundreds of cults, thousands of cults.
Well, the only reason we're following Huggy Bear is because Justin Theroux's son is with him, but they're off somewhere else.
Right, they're off somewhere else, but you're right. So, but cults are going to be everywhere. The Guilty Remnants, there could be branches everywhere. They're going to be other cults too.
And they own property, so clearly the remnants are probably all over the place.
So what you were suggesting is, how do we react to this 9/11 type event? You get the suggestion that from a federal government point of view, there's a degree of ass kicking. Like, we can't kill or shoot the people who did this, because we don't know who did this or what did this or what entity or feeling or power did this. But we'll take it out on this guy. And as a result, I mean, they go in, and he was right. They did just start shooting. They shot
everybody who came in there.
Everybody who said, "Hey, what's going on?" They're just shooting innocent people right and left. I mean, that was that's a modern Ann Coulter right-wing fantasy of how the federal government behaves
operates,
now. Right. So that was interesting, because maybe that's how the federal government reacts to this to some extent.
Yeah, if there's nobody to go to war against, just you take it out on whoever's handy,
Take it out on this guy, and for a while I wondered whether those accusations against Huggy Bear were, that's great, by the way, were legit, right? But then that did seem...
I mean, even in the opening conversation, it's kind of like, well, okay, so he's interacting with some senators, and he's got, like, I guess the teen girls is the one thing you can pin on him if they're underage or whatever. But
maybe he was like a father figure, but then he's like making out with that girl.
Yeah,
like,
no,
that
clearly.
Was clearly sexual.
Well, I mean, and in the last episode where he's pretty much telling, Chris Zilka hands off. I mean, obviously he's sleeping with all of them, but...
right, but now I'm just because the feds say he's underage, the girls are underage.
Yeah, no, who knows?
Who knows? Maybe they aren't. But also, maybe it would seem clear based on what he did to the senator, the Friday Night Lights guy, like, it might be real. Like,
that's the thing. That's the other, or is he? Like, is this guy a charlatan, or is he actually, And
it's Damon Lindelof.
He could be.
It's real. Like, I mean, he's helping. He has some power. So I just real quick, what I was getting, when I found myself explaining a show that I'm not really into yet to, like, people here at the Turks, to John, Idarola, and Irina, I was doing a pretty good job. Like, and I thought, wow, I guess I must be into it
You're
more
paying more attention than you thought.
Right, because when you explain it all, it's just, I wish it is a little bit difficult to watch this many sad people for 60 minutes.
True. Yeah. I just don't know what the alternative would be.
I agree. I don't know either. But that said, it is difficult to watch this many.
It's interesting to see the different ways that people act out. I mean, you have two members of this family who have joined different cults. You have the daughter who's clearly, like, taking out her aggression in weird ways, and what are we to make of the lady who spoke at Heroes Day, who's going around with a gun and taking these depositions?
My first thought for her was, again, here's something I was wrong about. It would appear from an old school TV thing. I'm like, oh, she killed her family and is using the event.
Right, which one of them joked about,
to cover, right, and then it gets joked about this week. I thought that last week. But the manner in which she talked to that couple, unless it's a total fraud, her job of getting them their check, that was a very difficult scene.
Yeah,
very difficult.
Having to ask those really probing questions about a person who has Down syndrome, like, no, he didn't have 20 sexual partners,
right.
and
He doesn't speak 6 languages.
Yeah,
right.
I did find the whole idea of her intentionally knocking the coffee cup over to be interesting. Like, the idea of, like, fuck it. Like, no one is gonna. I have a pass now because of this tragedy, and people are being so accommodating. It's almost to the point where she's probably sick of it in a way,
and somebody to say, "Hey, stop knocking over."
Exactly. Right. Like, she's testing to see if somebody will finally tell her, "Hey, like, you're a person like everybody else."
Maybe that'll happen with Jill. I think that's her name, with the daughter.
With the daughter, yeah. Could be.
And a daughter. I mean, and now as I'm talking this out, this is a woman who needs a child. And that's a child who needs a mother.
Yeah, that's true.
Any parental figure. So that would be a nice relationship, and that would also mean that she didn't kill her whole family and blame it on October 14th.
Exactly.
All right, 1 for 2.
I find the twins to be kind of an interesting foil to those girls.
They were on Desperate Housewives. I was trying to figure out where I had recognized those kids. Yeah, they're funny. They are providing the
a little bit of
they aren't terribly affected by it. Their family probably came through fine. But also, we're leaving out. Imagine going through this event and always also wondering all the time, is this going to happen again?
True.
And so, do I keep my job? Do I keep my health insurance? Do I do all these things? Why don't I just try to have sex with everybody I want to have sex with? I'm going to be a hedonist. That's what maybe that party suggested in the episode one.
The teen, this whole thing about like the dogs aren't our dogs anymore, and we're heading that way as well. It feels like the teens already are kind of like, well, fuck this. Like everything that it's sort of how today's young people, they're living with the notion of we're not going to have as good a life as our parents, so why am I going to college?
So
so if you're living under the threat of like we could all just disappear one day, why not just
what's the point of responsibility?
Right, exactly.
Of grown up responsibility. And so as I was talking about the show to John and Irina today, John said it probably will happen again, and I thought, oh yeah, like from a narrative, from a storytelling point of view, that would be good if in episode 8.
Just another 2%.
Another 2 or 3% of the people just vanished.
Let's talk about Dog Shooting Man. Do we think that he is, there's clearly they're setting up something sort of mystical happening. I mean, in terms of, yes, at least the daughter did see him, so it's not just an object, a figment of Justin Theroux's imagination.
Real.
Right, but you've got Scott Glenn's voices are talking about this guy, that they have sent this guy to Justin Theroux. So
I think it's that. The way Huggy Bear is touched, Scott Glenn, I think, is also touched, but Scott Glenn doesn't know how to handle it.
And that's why he flipped out?
That's why he flipped out to some extent. He's got the voices talking to him. Maybe there's a little madness in it. Maybe there's a little madness in Huggy Bear. But so I think it's real. I definitely don't think Justin Theroux, that guy's real. That guy shot dogs with him. That guy wants him to meet him at sundown tomorrow to shoot some more dogs.
Right, at the school.
At the school. Meet at the school to shoot puppies. That'll go well.
What could go wrong?
What could go wrong?
Looks like I accidentally watched the scenes from next week's episode. It looks like we're gonna get a lot of Christopher Eccleston.
Who plays who?
He's the guy who's handing out the flyers.
Oh, right.
These people were not chosen. Like this person was a bad parent and blah blah blah. He's sort of like kind of a somewhat fringy.
Right, that's good. Well, that makes sense.
When
we've been taught that, then we've been shown him, and he should be made interesting. So.
I'm still in.
No, I'm not in. And as I found from that conversation and this one, the more that you talk about The Leftovers, the more likely you are to want to watch the next Leftovers. So
I get why people are not signing on, because it is a dour story, and there's not a lot of humor to it, and it's about depressing subject matter. But I think that it is insightful about how we as a contemporary society respond to big, awful tragedies like this one.
Yeah, and either I hope that it becomes slightly less dour, or we just get comfortable with its level, the level of tone or despair. Shows like, we did Fargo. You don't watch Game of Thrones. You will eventually, I'm sure. Like, Game of Thrones has the famous Red Wedding episode, and yet there is an element of fun in that. A guy gets his eyes gouged out when the mountain gouges out Oberon's eyes in Game of Thrones. Like, you're like, it's horrific, but it's fun. Fargo, and those murders of people we like, somehow they make it fun. And it's really, it's the manner in which the characters go through life, and seeing such depressed, beaten down characters, and almost everyone is. There's very little joy in these people's lives.
Because we didn't get to know any of these people before awful shit went down. So everybody on this show basically has some form of PTSD.
That's right. That's exactly right. So that makes it that's what's a challenge for the viewer, I think. And I'm obviously I'm committed to watching them all. But that's what you have to get past as a viewer. And I think the story is interesting enough to do that, and talking about it helps enormously. So thank you.
My pleasure.
See you next week for more of The Leftovers, and we'll be cranking up Masters of Sex.
Yes.